27.
2000.
03.
Okay. Let's see. First, we'll start off with like how much do you know about your great grandparents, your parents, where they were born?
I, I know that they were born in Arizona, both of them, both my mother and my father. But my grandparents, they were born. My grandfather, Carrillo, was born in Los Angeles, downtown L.A. when it was nothing but a little tiny village, you know. And
Okay.
what else was
Sorry.
there? And my grandfather on my father's side, I mean, his father, was born in he was born in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
He was born in New Mexico. I don't know where,
Okay.
but and then he went into he got a he was working as a cowboy.
Uh-huh.
Well,
What was
actually,
his name?
his name was Gregorio Gregorio Bustos
And that was on your father's side,
on my dad's side, and his name was Urban.
Urban. And that was your father's name, was
Yeah,
Urban.
that's my father's name. And
Okay.
he had let's see, what did we have? He had 4 children,
And what were their names?
and their names were Kathy, George, Jesus, and Urban.
Okay.
Urban was my father,
Okay.
and then his mother died real early,
Mhm.
and he was just a little kid. He was about 8 years old when she
Mhm.
died, and he was the oldest, so you can imagine the rest of them were little babies
Yeah.
practically. And then he, let's see, he married another woman.
Mhm.
Either he married her or he was
Living
living
together.
with her. She was an Anglo,
Mhm.
and she was a
What was her name? Do you know?
I have it somewhere. I have a picture of them and everything.
Wow.
Oh, her name was Bailey.
Okay.
Their last name was Bailey, and we have pictures of them, showing.
Okay.
It shows the whole family, her family, and
Mhm.
and my relations,
Mhm. Okay.
And this picture must have been taken about maybe in 1910.
Oh, do you know where the picture is?
I haven't seen it around in a long time,
We need to look at it.
We'll find it.
Okay.
And then what else is there? Let's see. He went. He was actually my grandfather on my father's side was what they call a wrangler.
Uh-huh.
He broke horses for a cattle ranch, for all the cattle ranches
Mhm.
all over. They'd call him in and he'd get a string of horses for them ready so that somebody could ride them.
Oh, really? Wow. And that was Urban? Oh, no, not
No,
Urban.
that was
That was
Gregorio.
Gregory. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was quite a guy,
Mhm.
He could speak Spanish, but he spoke English real well,
Okay.
without an accent.
Okay.
And he was pretty good.
Yeah.
He looked a lot like my Uncle George.
Mhm. Okay.
Which was his father. And then he was, another thing was, he, uh, he did pretty well. Uh, while he was out earning a living for the kids. He then, and then let's see, who was it? As the kids got older,
Mhm.
I guess they moved out of the house.
Okay.
And then, let's see, just about that time, World War I was happening,
Mhm.
and then there was a big World War I was happening in Europe.
What year was that?
1914.
1914. So your dad must have been about
About 16.
16. That's, he's worried about the noise. Well,
And let's see, that was about that was
1914.
1914 it started, and there was a big war going on in Europe. But
Uh-huh.
the Americans didn't get into it until 1917.
Uh-huh.
And let's see, yeah, 1917. But none of the Bustos kids got into it.
They didn't go.
His uncles and stuff like that, they got into it.
So that would be his father's brothers?
Yeah.
When?
His father's brother got into it.
And what was his name?
In 1917. Oh, what the hell was his name? Well, let's see. His name was, I wish I could remember.
You told me your father's date of birth before. What was it? Do you remember it? I remember you telling me it was
1901.
And then
December the 23rd, 1901 was my father's birthday.
in Clifton, Arizona.
In, yeah, I guess it was in Clifton, yeah.
Or somewhere around there.
All the
close
kids
by
were
there.
probably born in that area. I really don't know much about it. I know there was something called Greenlee County.
Greenlee.
Okay. After that, things went on. And they all began to separate, and come to California. And they got jobs out here.
Uh-huh.
My father actually became a lumberjack up in Oregon.
Really?
Yeah, he was a lumberjack for a long time. He was all the way up there near Oregon, of course, Oregon.
Must have been before you were born.
Oh yeah, yeah, oh hell yeah. Way before I was born. And he went up there and he came back. When he came back, boy, he owned a new car and everything.
Mm-hmm. You made a bunch of money.
But he made a lot of money as a lumberjack, and then he came back.
So how did him and your mother meet? Like, where did
I really don't know.
you don't know? But they both lived in Arizona?
No, at that time, no, they lived
No.
in. By that time, my mother and her family had come to California.
And they lived in Los
Actually,
Angeles?
they were actually my grandfather was he was a Californian. He was an old California family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Carrillos.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was let's see, what were they? She was a Poindexter.
Mm-hmm.
She had an Anglo name,
Mm-hmm.
but she was a Poindexter.
So her father's name was Poindexter.
No, her father's name was Carrillo.
Well, where did the Poindexter come from?
Her mother, Martha.
Oh.
Her mother was Martha Poindexter.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and she was and it's a funny thing about her. She could speak Indian languages. You know, she spoke Spanish, English, and different, and she spoke some of these Pima, and
Really?
yeah,
So
yeah.
she was very smart.
Yeah, she was real smart. She could get out there and so she used to trade with the Indians in those days.
So do you remember her at all? Did you ever meet her?
Oh yeah, I knew her real well.
Wow.
She lived with us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when my father established a home here in California and he married my mother,
Mm-hmm.
he was he got her in with him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and her husband Adolfo Carrillo,
Mm-hmm.
Adolf
Mm-hmm.
Carrillo was he was the Californian.
Mhm.
That's where they got the name Carrillo.
Ah.
The name Carrillo, but her name was Poindexter,
Okay.
and all of the kids were
Okay.
they got the name.
So she was English and he was
Yeah,
Spanish.
she was
Or
a
Californian. Californio.
Californian, and she was from English stock, you know.
Okay.
Because her father was a Poindexter. His
Okay.
name was William Gentry Poindexter.
And I saw those pictures of him. There's pictures. I mean, he was a Union soldier, right? Or he was in
yeah,
the Union Army.
I think he was in the Union Army.
Yeah, I saw that picture of him.
and he was in, I gotta get over into Los Angeles and see if I can get, those pictures.
Yeah, I want to
See,
go get those
the
too.
Union owed the family a lot of money, because during the Civil War, they took a lot of, horses
Uh-huh.
from them, and they never paid them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They never
From
did.
your family?
Yeah, well, from my mother's family,
Really? I wonder if we can go back like everybody else does.
yeah. Sue them.
You owe us. You owe our family. How many horses did they take?
Oh, there must have been quite a few, because they were taken for the cavalry.
During the Civil War?
Yeah, during the Civil War. And then
Wow.
after the Civil War, we had the Indian Wars, the Apaches. The Apaches were raising hell with all of the Americans that were moving in, you know.
Ah.
And one time when what's his name? What was that guy's name?
Oh, the Indian?
Yeah, the Indian.
Oh.
One was
Geronimo or?
Both Geronimo. Geronimo was the mean son of a gun.
Yeah.
He was carrying on a war with the army, man. A bitter
Wow.
war.
So did your grandfather ever have to actually, was he in the army during the time of fighting with the Indians?
No, he
or?
was he was a miner, and he had silver mines and stuff like that. He had them. He had one mine in Arivaca, Mexico,
Uh-huh.
and he owned it, you know,
Uh-huh.
with a partner in Mexico. I don't know what his name was, but he'd come back with silver and stuff like that.
So that's your mother's
Father.
father. Oh,
No,
okay.
I guess that
Yeah.
would be him.
Ah.
And then there was oh man, he finally he broke a leg
Mm-hmm.
and he died.
From a broken leg?
Yeah, in those days, a broken bone was something very serious. You know.
Really?
That was a serious injury in those days.
Did you ever know him? Meet him? Or?
No, I never knew any
He
of them.
died before? Just
Oh yeah, in
your
those days, you
grandmother?
know, you didn't live very long.
Well, your grandmother sounded like she lived a long time.
Well, she was born in 1868.
Wow. So she lived a
And
long
she
life.
lived all the way into the 30s. No, she lived into the 40s. Her children and her husband, you know, and most of them died, you know, except Henry Carrillo.
Mm-hmm.
When he came here, he was one of the smart ones. He passed the test for you know, civil service. You know, and he was a real strong guy, and he became a fireman. He was a fireman for the city of Los Angeles.
And that is Henry Carrillo would be your grandfather's brother, right?
No, he was my mother's brother. He was an uncle. He was my uncle Henry. And the only trouble is, they got him into the army for World War I.
Mm-hmm.
He was in what they call the Rainbow Division.
Mm-hmm.
And you know who the boss of the Rainbow Division was?
No.
It was General MacArthur.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So his boss was General MacArthur?
Yeah, well,
Your uncle's boss.
the Rainbow Division. He was either the lead. It was either the executive officer or the boss. You know? But he's a big man in those days. You know?
So who is it that you knew in Hanford, or that you would go visit up there in Hanford?
Oh, my grandfather.
That was your grandfather,
Yeah.
Bustos?
Yeah,
Okay.
and Jesus lived there they had a small farm.
Who is Jesus?
Jesus was he was an uncle of mine.
Oh.
He was one of the four of his kids, you know, Cassie,
Okay, so he lived up there with his father.
My father, and Jesus.
But Jesus lived up there with his father and his father's
Yeah.
new wife.
Yeah.
And kids.
He got a new one. I think the other one died too. And then as it happened, he got another, he married another woman. This one was, I don't know if she was Mexican or what, you know.
Mm-hmm. You know what she was?
I forgot what her name was.
You said she was
Timotea.
Timotea. Oh, that was her last name.
Yeah, no, that was her first
Her
name.
first name was Timotea.
Timotea, or
Yeah.
like Timothy.
Ah.
That's the Spanish for Timothy.
Yeah. Okay.
And she was a weird one, man.
Really?
She had all the people in the neighborhood afraid of her, man.
Really?
Yeah. But in a way, they used to come to her if they figured that somebody had a curse on them or something like that. They'd come to her and she'd dispel it. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
She was a witch. Yeah.
That's funny. So I wonder what type of witch, like a Wiccan, like they ever heard of Wiccan?
No, she was I don't know what the hell she did, what it was, but she was a witch. You know? Isn't that something?
That it? What years did they live there, from when to when?
Oh, they lived until in the from the 20s. Let's see, and we'd go see them in the 30s. I saw them twice in the 30s, and then we just.
From then.
Then when World War II came around,
And that was in
Jesus
1945.
got drafted into the army.
How old was he?
How old was he? I'm not sure. I'm not.
He
I
must have
never
been
was
pretty
sure.
old by then, or was he the youngest?
No, he wasn't the youngest. The youngest was George.
Well, World War II broke out in 1941. 41. Okay.
And he was in his, I guess he was a teenager or something.
Really?
Yeah. And they got him. Well, I don't know. He was older than that.
Really?
Oh yeah, he was quite old. And he died of a heart attack.
Really?
Yeah, he was a little. He lived a little too high.
Oh, really? He liked to party?
Boy, did he party.
Really?
I'll tell you one thing. I never thought much of him. I didn't think he was very handsome or anything like that. But he sure used to pick up the women, man. I mean, these women used to come over to try to pick him up.
Really?
Yeah, man, you know.
This is when he lived in Hanford?
No, he lived in L.A.
Oh. Because you said after he got out of the service, then he went to Los Angeles.
And this gal wanted to live with him, you know. And she was pretty nice, you know.
Really?
I used to think that. What is she seeing him, you know?
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I mean, you know.
Well, sometimes it's just the personality. You know,
Well,
it comes to the confidence.
he had his.
Comes from within.
I guess maybe, you know, some people are sexy. That's all.
Yeah, that must have been it. He had it.
He had
what
it.
they call
yeah.
it.
Yeah, he had it. Yeah.
So he moved out of Hanford when he left the service.
Well, when he went into he was in what did they call it? He went to a communications unit back in. He had to go to school in New Jersey. So he did a lot there. And then we had my father never went in the service. He dodged it. He was a draft. Well, no, he wasn't.
He was probably too old, and he had kids.
Yeah, by then, he had.
We had you and
he
his
had two,
sister.
me and my sister. He had me and my sister, and by then he had two kids that had died on him. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
Frankie and Edward. Frank and Edward.
And they were babies.
Yeah, they were just babies. And we had. What else was there? I remember when Edward died. I was there, and nobody seemed to care. You know, my mother was. She thought that he was such a beautiful little baby. But so I baptized him myself.
How old was he when he died?
Well, I don't know, a few hours old.
Oh, so he had just born. He was just born.
He was just born.
And he was just born there in the house.
He was born at home.
Wow.
Yeah, born in the house, and I was born in Los Angeles, there on 14th. Well, it used to be called Clanton Street. Across the street from what they used to call the Sterling Laundry. It's still there, but it's not a laundry anymore. It's a machine shop or something. And we were across the street in this upper story of an apartment house. The second story there was one house. And then down below, my Aunt Jenny and her husband Johnny and Willie, Alpha and Rosie.
Who was Aunt Jenny related to?
Oh, she was my grandmother's sister. She was my grandmother's
Your
sister.
grandmother lived with you?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Well, she moved in with us because but she had another daughter.
Uh-huh.
Her name was Rose, Rosenda or Rose, something like
Uh-huh.
that. And then she had Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Tony was about 25 when Rosenda died.
What did Rosenda die of?
And she died in an automobile accident.
Oh,
Her and
really?
some of her friends were out. They were out cruising, partying,
Uh-huh.
and they went across one of those. I think it was one of those red cars, they used to
Oh,
have.
really?
Yeah, boom, and they got into an accident, and I didn't hear about it till we had to go to the funeral.
Wow.
But she was very close to me.
How old was she when she died?
She was older than my mother.
Oh, really?
And did you know, for some reason, her and my mother never spoke to each other.
They were sisters?
They were sisters, and and she died,
Uh-huh.
and she never spoke a word. They never spoke a word to each other.
What is it? They must have gotten into a fight?
I don't know. Maybe she liked my father or something.
Oh, you think that's what it was?
I have a sneaky hunch that's what it was.
That she was maybe after. Oh, wow.
And she liked my dad.
And so that she was upset about that. Yeah, that would make them not speak.
It would cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So what happened when she died?
When she died,
Just
that's
life
it.
went on.
That
and
was it. Life went on. And my father and her. I remember we lived in a green house, then we lived in that yellow house.
Do you remember the addresses of them?
No.
No.
And I remember, and the yellow house was where my sister was born.
Mm-hmm.
My sister was born. I remember when she was born, there was a lot of people, she was born at home, and her friends delivered her.
Really?
My mother's friends delivered. In those days, that's what everybody did that.
Yeah.
And you didn't go to a hospital. Who the hell in the Depression, who could afford a hospital,
Yeah.
And it was, so as that happened,
Uh-huh.
she was born at home, and I remember. And Frankie was already born. That's right. Frankie was born when we lived there.
Uh-huh.
And he died. He caught pneumonia. You caught pneumonia in those days, you just kissed it off.
Yeah. Was that before
Yeah,
penicillin?
They took him. Well, that was way before. And we took him to that general hospital. He never made it out of there.
Really? How old was he?
He's buried over Evergreen Cemetery.
How old was he?
Oh, he couldn't have been over a year old.
Really? Wow.
The kids died by the scads in those days.
Yeah.
A lot of them died in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had, who else did we have? No, that's about all the kids my mother had.
Okay.
And then after a long while, and then we had a lot of people live with us,
Really? Move in?
Yeah, they used to move
Relatives
in.
or friends?
Relatives move in and out, We
Yeah.
didn't have to take care of them because in those days, things were pretty bad. But about that time that my sister was born, my grandfather, Korea, was still alive, Adolfo.
Uh-huh.
And he was still alive, and but he was in good. I remember one day I came home. I was just a little guy, I was even younger than him. I came home, and he was in bed. And I went over to, Grandma, and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And my grandmother took me aside and told me that he died.
Oh.
I went over there. I tried to wake him up,
Yeah.
But,
That was when he broke
that
his
was my
leg?
first close encounter with death,
And how old were you?
Oh, hell, I couldn't have been about 10 years old. About 10 years old. But, it was my first encounter with death.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, it was, Rosenda was another one. And then and my sister Lydia, she was just a little baby. And I was so jealous of her.
Really? People always are.
She was getting all the attention, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she was getting all the attention. But she was a cute little girl, and
Oh, yeah.
everybody made over her,
Yeah.
and I was a snotty little boy,
Okay, well, what was it like growing up in Los Angeles? And you were born in what, 1929?
No, 25.
25. So you were born November 15th?
No, oh no, November. I was born in November 1925.
What day?
Well, November the 14th.
Okay, 1925. Okay. And then, okay, what about the Depression? What was that like when it hit?
It wasn't too hot, But one thing good about it, my father had a job.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, he had a job, and he used to work for the Otis Elevator Company.
What did he do?
Well, he was one of
Mechanic,
those
or-
mechanics that kept it going,
Mm.
kept everything, kept the elevators going up and down. And then, but Otis, in the early, just as the 20s ended, they started building the city hall.
Uh-huh.
That big tall building you see up there.
Uh-huh.
And he was in on that,
Really?
the elevators in it,
Ah.
Yeah, and so he worked on that one.
So you remember LA when it was flat?
Well, yeah, it was that was the biggest building in Southern California was the City Hall of Los Angeles. And we used to think I thought it was the biggest building in the world. It has to be the biggest one in the world, Everything that I knew had to be the biggest in the world, There was a tree in front of our house there, and we had this, and it was tall. It was a tall, slim tree. I don't know what the heck kind of tree it was, but it was about maybe that big around, And it went straight up, and I used to look at it, I thought, man, it was a marvel, And I'd go over and I'd put my eye and look up the tree, all the way to the top. It's got to be the tallest one in the world. After that, some wise kid told me about the sequoias. That broke my heart, the sequoias.
Well, it was probably the biggest tree in your neighborhood, right?
Oh, easily it was. Yeah. And then there was next door there was a set of, it was not, I don't know if it was apartments or what do they call those things where they have two houses next to each other.
Oh, like a duplex.
It was a duplex, but it had two. It was 2 stories high.
Oh.
And these people are. I don't know that I should tell you this next door,
What? Tell us.
Well,
That's the best stuff.
Well, no, they weren't. They were. They wouldn't let their kids play with us because they thought that we were. When they found out that we had a little Mexican blood in us, that was it, man. They call that kid, don't play with him anymore. You don't play with a dirty little.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was in those days, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then and there were some people across the street. They were, I forgot. I don't even know their names.
Lived across the street from you?
Yeah, Nora and her brothers, And we got along with real good
Yeah.
with them. And then there was a set of, there was some Japanese that lived next door, across the street next door to them, and they were baseball players,
Really?
They were good, yeah. They were great.
So did you guys play baseball with them in the street, or?
Hell no, I wasn't that good. I was just a little kid.
Oh.
These guys were, they used to play,
Professional?
big time baseball.
Really?
Semi-professional.
Oh, okay.
You still got that camera going?
Yes.
Of
And
course.
and you'd see that those guys that hit the ball way up in the air, and one of the guys would get up there and look at him, and then he'd put behind it, he'd catch it behind his back. And then one guy would throw the ball to him, and then he'd go, the ball would disappear,
Mm-hmm.
But what he would do, he'd open his shirt, and it would go through it and around to the back,
Wow.
Wow, what happened to the ball, and all the rest of us kids, wow,
Sit out there and watch them.
Yeah, they were, and then they were a pretty good guy, a good bunch of guys. One of the guys, I remember they jumped on him and pantsed him, you know, they took his pants off.
The Japanese guys?
Yeah, they were, they was, he was so embarrassed, he ran in the house with just his, with a pair of, you know, regular, you know, pair of shorts on.
Uh-huh.
And everybody was laughing, you know. But that's what do they call that? You lose face or something.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Who did that to him?
His own brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was about maybe 4 or 5 brothers.
You don't remember what street that was on?
That was on Clanton Street.
Oh, that was on Clinton, okay.
They had all kinds of things going on there, and like, and then we moved out from there, out further out,
Mm-hmm.
and we moved into, what do they call those, courts? A set of courts. And courts are just a little house, you know.
Oh, okay.
And we went in there, and my grandmother, they moved into, I think it was called Paloma Street, just
Mhm.
around the corner.
Ah.
So we had to go over.
So you guys always stayed real close.
Yeah, we
the family
helped
always
them.
stayed real close.
Well, what it was is that whole neighborhood from Arizona all moved in that area. That's how we wound up there. You know?
Really?
Yeah, my Aunt Jenny and her Uncle Johnny.
So where was your
Aunt
mother
Cass.
from in Arizona? She was from Clifton
From
too?
Arizona? No, she's from there. She was from Tucson.
Tucson. Okay.
Well, all this family here was all from Tucson.
Oh, okay.
And the reason the Carrillos got there was my grandfather. He had a business, you know. He had a business with
In California.
with the post office, you know. And
What kind of
he'd
business?
run mail.
Oh.
He'd run mail all the way down there. From there, I think it was to San Bernardino. But his home, originally, he had come from Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
And he'd go, you know, he'd visit Los Angeles and stuff like that, see his family.
Uh-huh.
And you know, he had, one of his family was a famous actor. You probably
Uh-huh.
see his name was Leo Carrillo.
How was he related?
He was his cousin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that was his father or
His-
father's
his cousin.
brother,
And
son.
they had money because they inherited the Carrillo money.
Ah.
See, the Carrillos were pretty wealthy. They were
Okay.
Spanish landowners, you know,
Uh-huh.
stuff like that.
But his side didn't get any money. He had
No. I understand that my Uncle Tony understood that they were supposed to get some.
They were
My grandfather used to take him out and tell him, you see all this land here, someday it's going to be yours. You know.
Oh, really?
But it
What
never
happened?
happened.
You gotta have an
But
attorney.
this lady, when we used to live down here on 45th Street, way in the early 40s, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this lady used to come around in a limousine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see that these people had bread.
And who was
man.
she?
She was, I think she was my grandfather's sister.
Really?
She was of the Carrillos, you know.
So she had a lot of money.
Well, she had probably got a hold of some of that money, you know, one of the Carrillo money.
Ah.
And then you had this Leo Carrillo, you know.
Uh-huh.
He was, the Carrillos were pretty well known among Los Angeles
Yeah.
society. You know.
Uh-huh.
They recognized them because they had money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of money. They were pretty wealthy. Well, one thing about the Carrillos, they knew how to make money and they knew how to keep it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
'cause
was it? I remember you had told me someone was an alcalde in our family of Los Angeles.
That was the great grandfather.
Of
That
Leo
was-
of
and
the
it was-
Carrillos.
Yeah. Let's see. I had my grandfather, and then his grandfather, and then his father.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been his father or an uncle. I forgot what it was, but he was the alcalde of Los Angeles.
And his name was.
Jose Antonio Carrillo.
Okay.
And he's buried up in Santa Barbara Mission.
Really?
Yeah, if you go up there and you go into Santa Barbara Mission, go right up the middle aisle, you know, all the way to where the altar is. In front of the altar,
Mm-hmm.
there is a big black thing, you know, with all the names of the pioneers in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they have my great grandfather, whatever his great grandfather. His
Wow.
name, Jose Antonio Carrillo, and his
Mhm.
wife are buried just outside in the cemetery. They have a small cemetery there,
Mm-hmm.
and it just happens that they're buried there, Jose
Wow.
Antonio Carrillo.
Uh-huh.
But he was a big shot, you know.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah. So he was
All right.
but Leo Carrillo, you were, it's sort of a distant relation, you know.
Yeah. It
Sort
would
of
be
dis-
kind of distant.
yeah, sort of like he was a cousin of your great grandfather or something like that. No, of your grandfather.
And my grandfather's cousin.
But I don't know I never found out what that lady's name was, you know.
That used
But
to
she'd
come
come over,
around.
she would come over, she must have been a nice lady,
Uh-huh.
to actually come over to see her poor relations, you know, my grandmother, to see her poor relations.
So that was your mother's cousin? Your
Well,
father's cousin?
she was my grandfather's sister, I think.
Oh, okay. So you'd come and visit him.
My grandfather, Carrillo's sister. Of course, her name was something else by then.
Yeah. Well, maybe she married somebody with a lot of money.
Could be.
You know.
Yeah. But how did the Carrillo guy get in there? You know, Leo. He had all kinds of money.
Yeah, we'll have to do a tree where we make the
You know,
connect.
I went to a what do I call it? I went to a parade,
Mhm.
and the guy that led the parade was Leo Carrillo.
Really?
Yeah, he was dressed real nice.
Uh-huh.
I mean, real nice cowboy, real nice gun on him, you know, and all that. Yeah, he's pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
But he didn't know who I was,
No.
that I was related to him.
Yeah.
You know. I just didn't say nothing. I kept my mouth shut.
Yeah. What do you say? You know.
Yeah.
You don't know what their reaction will be. You know, it'd be taking a chance.
Yeah.
Ah.
But it's something that we knew.
Yeah. Huh, I wonder what happened with that.
Oh, I don't know. They just, my grandfather, he he took off from Los Angeles. That's how he wound up in Tucson, Arizona. But he started a business there, and he did real well.
Okay.
I remember having
Maybe he felt like he didn't need their money, you know. He wanted
Well,
to make it on his
he,
own.
well, he made it pretty good on his own because he had a big bank account with, it was called the Bank of Italy in those days. It's the Bank of America now.
You're kidding. It
Yeah.
started out as a Bank of
Yeah,
Italy.
I wish we still had some of those checks from the Bank of Italy.
You used to have checks that said the Bank of
Yeah,
Italy
but-
on
yeah.
them?
They were in
You're
some.
kidding.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened to them.
I don't know.
I think it's
Those people.
stored away somewhere.
Yeah, I had we had all kinds of photos. I had the wedding photos of my grandmother and my grandfather. He was a huge man.
You have them?
They're in Los Angeles, I
Oh,
guess.
we gotta go there. We gotta call my.
Yeah, because we have papers there, like those papers about the Union Army grabbing some of our horses, you know, some of the horses of the family,
Really?
and they never paid.
Well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna find it.
We'll have to go down there to
Yeah,
Los Angeles
let's go down there.
and check
Okay.
it out.
Okay, how much tape do we have left? Oh, yeah, 15 minutes. Okay. Okay. What schools did you go to in L.A. when you were living in
Well,
Los Angeles?
I didn't go I didn't go to a kindergarten. They had a kindergarten there,
Mhm.
but I was a little too advanced for some reason, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I wound up in the first grade.
Oh, so they moved you ahead.
Yeah, I remember my first teacher, Mrs. Gentle, or Miss Gentle, or something like that.
Wow.
And she took a real liking to me.
Mhm.
She thought I was the cutest kid. I had curly hair and all
Uh-huh.
that stuff, and she grabbed me and pushed me into her bosom, you know. I remember her because of that. She made such a big, you know, fuss
Uh-huh.
over me. So.
What was the name of that school?
San Pedro Street School. It's still there. You know who taught there?
Who?
Andres's, you know, Andrew's wife. Pedro Street School.
Okay. And how?
Is it on right now?
How many years were you there?
Well, I went all the way to the 6th grade.
Uh-huh.
In those days, you only went six years elementary, then you went to junior high school.
Okay.
And in junior high school, I went to Lafayette Junior High School.
Okay, and that's in Los Angeles.
That's in L.A.
Okay.
And then I tried to get into Polytechnic High School,
Mhm.
but that didn't work out.
Okay.
And they shipped me out to to Jefferson High School.
Okay.
That's over on 41st Street. That's quite a ways away, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was too far.
But, you know, since streetcars were only a nickel, you know.
You just rode the
In fact,
streetcar.
less than that. I remember when streetcars were 3 cents a ride.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And then they went to a nickel and everybody, oh man, that's terrible. And then I went there until I graduated.
Okay. You were in track in high school, right?
Yeah, I tried track, but I mean, you didn't have much of a chance there, you know. Those black guys were the fastest runners. They were the best runners around, you know. They're great. One of them, I mean, let's see, who was it? We had some guys that went to the Olympics.
Really?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to remember his name. Mel Whitfield.
Oh,
He
really?
won a gold medal. He was 800-meter champion.
Did you ever run against him?
Hell no.
You ever run with him? Did you ever meet him or see him?
Oh yeah, I mean.
So he went the same years as you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw him. I mean, but I graduated ahead of him.
What year did you graduate?
Oh, I graduated in 1943.
Okay.
And a week later, I was in the Navy.
Wow.
And it didn't take long, man. The war was going on, and you know, and we were having a bad time of it then. And we went into, I went to boot camp down in San Diego, and got out of boot camp, and I went to what they call a place where they ship you out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
After I had my training, and I went to. In the meantime, they were giving me electrical lessons, you know, stuff like that, like a school they had there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they called us out from, we met a bunch of Marines from Camp Pendleton, and we went down to, they took us to San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
At San Diego, there was an aircraft carrier there, and it was the same aircraft carrier that President Bush was on.
Really?
Yeah. And they took us out, and we were looking out, man, looking at San Diego and the United States fade away, man. They wouldn't let us write to our folks.
Why?
You know, you get a torpedo up your ass, you know.
If you're right?
Oh, well, you do, yeah. Nobody's supposed to know what was happening.
Oh, they didn't want anyone to know where you were at.
Or where we were
I
going.
see, so you couldn't.
And it took us maybe 4 or 5 days, and we were in. I remember they used to have all kinds of anti-aircraft practice and stuff like that, and we went to Hawaii, and Hawaii was not a state in those days; it was a territory. And,
yeah.
And you know what they used to call that? That was the territory of Hawaii. And we went in through into Pearl Harbor, and some of the wreckage was still there. Man, you know, the Arizona and all those beat up things. You know.
Pearl Harbor. What year was Pearl Harbor hit?
Well,
that was in
the late 41.
Late 41.
December 7th.
So you were still in high school at the time?
Yeah, I was still in high school.
Do you remember what you were doing when that happened?
Yeah, I was on a Sunday. It was the Sunday, December 7th.
Yeah.
I was laying on this couch like that, listening to music.
Uh-huh.
You know, on this, what do they call it, swing music in those days. It was so popular.
Were your parents home?
I guess they were.
Where everybody was? Okay.
But, man, everybody got up, and there was a big crowd out on the street, and we lived out in, we lived out in a neighborhood, you know.
Uh-huh.
And we got everybody talking, wow, you know, the Pearl Harbor got bombed, you know. What? You know, because they interfered with the radio, you know. They got in there and told us that, hey, you know, they stopped the radio station and told us what was happening, that we were going to get.
And you were still in high school at the time, right?
Yeah, I was still in high school.
So, like, at what point in high school did you, or after you got out, did you realize that you were going to have to go?
Everybody wanted to join.
Everybody wanted to join.
Yeah, in those days, man, let's go get them, you know, whoop their butt, you know.
Yeah.
And we went, About after I graduated in 1943, that's 2 years later,
Uh-huh.
about the middle of the war that's going on, and we were still getting a bad time. You know?
Uh-huh.
And then I just got up and went to, let's see, when I graduated in June of 1943,
Uh-huh.
and then we went to, I remember I took my mother and my grandmother and Lydia went to see me graduate, you know, big deal. And then I went with my buddy Steve.
Mm-hmm.
We all went together to have some fun, you know.
Graduate from high school or graduate Okay.
No, from high school.
Okay.
And then Steve, and before I even got into the Navy, he went out and he got drowned.
How did he drown?
I know he was out and playing on a boat, you know.
In the ocean?
No, he was on a lake someplace,
Uh-huh.
you know. And yeah, boy, that was, because me and him were very close. You know.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't go with him that day, you know. I forgot what I had to do. And boom, you know, he went in. I thought, well, we didn't have any more friends. All my friends had joined the army, and
Uh-huh.
the whole neighborhood was empty, you know.
And your friend died.
So I just decided I didn't want to go into the army.
Uh-huh.
So then I got into the Navy.
You just went and joined. They didn't draft you?
No, they never drafted me. I volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered to go when I went in, and I was.
Kamikaze survivor.
Well, that's one of those things we did. We saw a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were.
So you went off on the
Tinian,
ship. You trained in Hawaii, and then.
Yeah, well, we went to Hawaii, but well, we had the regular military training over in San Diego, in the grinder, learned how to march and shoot rifles. And in those days, we shot rifles, you know.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But now the Navy men don't do none of that stuff, you know.
Yeah, everything's high tech.
We'd learn how to put rifles in a tripod like that so we can walk away from
So
them.
how long until you saw some action, like real?
Oh, about 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, I got put away, and then we started to go. We went into Pearl Harbor there, and we waited there for a while. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And they put me in a place called the Destroyer Base.
Mm-hmm.
And in the back of the Destroyer Base, the Seabees had built a whole bunch of barracks, you know, out of wood. And there was a lot of this, what do they call it, a lot of sugar cane.
Mm-hmm.
That where we were at was behind Pearl Harbor. There was a lot of sugar cane, you know, all the way up. And I tell you, those mosquitoes at night, they'd eat you alive.
Yeah.
And then one day we came out, and they called out some names, and I was one of them. And they put me in charge
Of what?
of this group of guys, a
Okay.
draft, you know. And I went out, and I was a little smarter than most of them.
Uh-huh.
So they put me in charge, and I had to carry their papers with me.
Uh-huh.
So they took me out, and what was it? They put us on what they call an anti-aircraft cruiser, and we were off, you know. And I don't know, we went to Majuro or someplace like that, and it was, I mean to tell you, the ocean's awful empty out there, man.
Yeah.
We went out I was on a destroyer. Well, that's right, I went on the anti-aircraft cruiser, and I went to pick up a destroyer.
So then they put you on a destroyer.
They put me in. I had the luck to be put on the Charles Osborne. You know. And that night, I just got on, the first time I ever been aboard ship. First thing they did was give me a helmet, a life vest, fed me, and told us where to sleep, you know. You can sleep anywhere you want, you know. Just lay down someplace, right on the deck. Oh yeah, well it's hot and it's warm there anyhow.
Yeah.
And we started pulling out, man.
Uh-huh.
And we went out. This is the first time I ever been aboard ship, man. And we went out, and on our way out, we got we were rumbling through the night, because it was still daylight when we left, you know.
Uh-huh.
We were rumbling through the night, and these guys, wait do you see what happens, you know. I remember the guy I got pretty friendly with a chief named, he was an old type chief named Charlie Poole.
Uh-huh.
And he, and as we went out that night, boy, about 10 o'clock at night, I guess, I don't remember what time it was. Way over in the distance, you see that, you could hear that, ba 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 boom. You see these red things going through the sky. They were shooting at something,
Uh-huh.
and then we were headed for it. We were headed right for it, man. I said, "Oh shit, what did I get myself into?" You know?
Yeah.
And then boom, and then a little while later they said, you know, surface action starboard, you know, and guns started pointing out, you know. They started pointing out, and I could hear the shells clattering into the guns, you know. And the while in boom, you know, they let go with the salvo. Oh, we had things were going off and on, and you know, you see, I think we were bombarding an island someplace.
So nobody was shooting at you, you were just shooting?
Well, no, they knew what was formed. I can't tell what was
so you
happening.
really don't know what happened that night.
And then
2 minutes.
we went, as we went over, we were still shooting, and then we pulled back into this base where we were at,
Mm-hmm.
and there was 5 destroyers. We came back,
Mm-hmm.
and then I forgot what the hell happened after that. But we got a chance, and then we pulled out, and we moved our address to a place called Eniwetok.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Kwajalein and Eniwetok and Majuro, places like that, and then we wound up there, and then they decided they were going to use us to go and look at the islands and look at the Marianas.
Is it done?
Is it over?
Yeah,
Yep.